Hi, I'm Radiance, and welcome to my channel. So, I just got off work a few hours ago, and I was thinking, I was actually sitting down, making some plans for my schedule in life and just things I had to accomplish. And it got me to thinking about my job, so to speak, but I actually have a career. Because most people feel that job means just over broke. But I'm speaking to those of us who've had a job or have a job. Technically, I'm a contractor. It's been my career for a while. I've actually shifted over to contract work. But I can say that for a very long time I worked a job or worked jobs. And so I'm thinking about job or career, but how to find joy in the job. Now, have I always been in this space? Hell no. Hell no. In truth, I am an entrepreneur. I feel like I've been that way for a very long time. Many years ago, many years ago, when I decided to, try college, I remember leaving school. It was early on. I wasn't anywhere deep into a degree, but what happened was I ended up leaving school because although I had this goal and this career that I was going after, and what came to me at that time was, once I get this degree, I'll basically be just working for someone else. And so I couldn't see that for myself at the time. I really couldn't. Now, I'm not judging it. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the job, because for me, I pretty much have always used, and to a certain extent still use, the work that I do as a stepping stone, right? I consider it an investor. So in terms of how I've reframed it, let me tell you how to, find joy. Or if you don't want to even reach that high, maybe happiness in your job and your current work, right? So one of the biggest ways, and I talk about this a lot, is gratitude, right? Gratitude, because you can say, oh, I freaking hate this job. And I was just there, honestly, a few months ago, like real talk, a contract that I was working, and I had others I took on. But that contract challenged me in so many ways, and I really wasn't happy. It's interesting, when I left recently, I say recently, when I left, the family that I worked for, was sad to see me go. And, even gave me a hug and was just like, hey, keep up with us. Let us know that, because I afterwards was planning to travel. But the point is, it was just so interesting. And that's why perspective is very interesting, right? Because even though we were in the same environment for several times a week, the experience that this family was having was different than I was having, right? And that's why it's so important that you sometimes shift your perspective, right? Because here's the thing. Yeah, let's say you're miserable, but my nephew. But sometimes what happens if you're in this environment, right? And it's just like being in a movie theater, for example. You're there with a bunch of people. Let's say you're there with a date, your family or whatever. You have a bunch of people. You're all watching the same movie, but you have different reactions, different thoughts, different feelings, and you're seeing different things, right? Of what's going on in that movie. Same thing goes for your job or career or your work that you're doing, right? You could be showing up every day for this particular work that you're doing, and you're going in there because you're upset. You're going in there because you're showing up. You're tired. You're tired because you stayed up the night before, and only got 4 hours of sleep. So you're already tired. Then you're grumpy, right? Maybe you spilled your coffee on the way out, right? Or you haven't gotten your coffee yet. Then you show up and your boss or your employer is on a rampage. They want to know what's going on with this particular project. Or you have coworkers, who you don't get along with. Whatever things are happening in that environment, right? And so the point is, you have, all these things going on, and all you see is that, you just see the aggravation, right? But there is a way out of that. And I'll give an example from what I dealt with. So yeah, I wasn't happy in this contract, but guess what? I chose it. Yes, I still interviewed for this contract. Yes, I was chosen, but I could have said no. Now, in truth, I didn't say no. I didn't say no because prior to this contract, or that contract, I should say, months prior to that, I was out of work for a period of 5 months. 5 months. I really was. And so it was frustrating. It was frustrating because I kept looking and looking and looking for a job or looking for a source of income. Prior to that, I had two really great contracts and they ended at the same time. And then I also had businesses. And what happened was some of those businesses slowed down and I ended up having to close some of those businesses. And I never would have expected that's how my year would have began. And so with that being said, all these things happened and I chose to. I wouldn't say have to, but at the time I thought I had to. But I chose to then go figure out a source of income to make sure that I can sustain and then also be there to support my family, right? So that's why I did it. Now, does that make it better? No. But I chose. So remind yourself, you also chose this. You also chose this. Now, of course, I didn't look for something else. I kept looking for the whole time I was on this contract. It was about 5 or 6 months. And I had things come up, but they didn't work out, or it just wasn't the right schedule, or it would have conflicted because my plan at one point was to work it, and I did honestly work it and have other contracts, by the way. So I did have other work that came through, but this was the most consistent, right? Other ones were kind of shorter term. And so I didn't sleep a lot during those times. But with that being said, I chose it. So one, remind you chose this. Two, if it's that bad, choose something else. No one would say, "Whoa, why would I do that? What if I lose?" No, you always have a choice. You always have a choice. You have a choice to do something else. But here's the thing. I'm talking about your choice and how you react to it. When it came to the contract I had, my partner actually was the person that really, really reminded me and got at me and was like, "Hey, you know what? You should be more grateful." And it's something that I teach and preach all the time. And I wasn't in gratitude. I really wasn't. I was more in misery. I was so focused on what was I frustrated about this job that I really wasn't in gratitude. And eventually, after speaking to my partner, I had to check myself. I had to look at what was positive, right? And what was working. For one, I had a job. I had a source of income that I was able to start helping my family with again and supporting my family. For two, this particular contract, this assignment, was a literal 12 to 13 minute drive. So my commute was like, just like that, right? I think the one time my commute was longer was I hit some traffic, and it actually happened my last day there. And it was something I couldn't help. They had blocked off something on the highway or the freeway. And if I even tried to go local, it was blocked off. And my employer was very understanding. And what could I do about it? But without traffic or any delay, literally 12, 13 minute, commute. So it was near my home, right? On the way home, even if I left later, because I had some times when I left at 5 p.m., which was, quote, rush hour time. Guess what? Even with the traffic that I ran into on the freeway, sometimes even that was quicker. And by the way, that was because one time I tried to go local and I was in traffic forever and uber frustrated when I literally should have just jumped on the freeway. I learned a lesson that day, jump on the freeway. But even with the traffic on the freeway, I literally only had to go, I think 2 or 3 exits. And I say 2 or 3 because the second exit that I passed was towards my home, and then the next one was towards my home, right? I just chose the later one because that was my favorite. But the point is, even with some of that traffic, my commute was still maybe 15 minutes home during that time, right? So once again, short commute going to and coming from.